1-800 Makeup Hotline. This is Jamie. How can I help you?
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are doing another makeup hotline. I did one of these about 6 months ago and it was so much fun to do. I can't even believe I haven't done one since, so I figured it was about time. So you guys send over some makeup and beauty related questions over on Instagram and I am going to try my best to answer them. So I hope that you guys are gonna enjoy it. Let me know in the comments all of your thoughts and hit the thumbs up button if you do. It lets me know that you wanna see videos that are like this more often, and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. So let's get started. So the first question that we have here is from Asiella, and she asks, how do you hide textured skin? If you guys didn't know, I have dry skin. And what comes with that dry skin is a lot of texture. There are some days where my texture isn't so bad and it could be on the smoother side, and there are other days where my texture is just wild and there's flakiness going on, and it honestly makes putting on makeup really annoying. And the thing with texture, and this is gonna be a really annoying answer, you can't really hide it. With makeup, it's really easy to correct color, but it's definitely much more difficult to correct texture. But that's not to say that it's not impossible. I just say, instead of working against the texture that is on your skin, work with it instead. So my biggest tip when it does come to texture is to start with skincare. And I'm not just saying like have a good skincare routine. I'm saying have a good skincare routine that you use specifically before applying your makeup, because skin that is properly prepped with skincare will just accept makeup so much better than skin that is not prepped properly with skincare. So if your skin is really nicely hydrated and you put your makeup on top, it's just gonna sit a lot better on your face. So while you're not gonna be able to completely make the texture disappear, it's just going to allow your makeup to just sit a little bit more comfortably on your skin. When it comes to the actual makeup, I do find that less is definitely more on textured skin, because I find the more product that I apply, the worse it ends up looking for me. So I like to use something really, really lightweight and fluid. And so those are all of the tips that I personally use to help combat my texture. So I hope that helps. Kina Utterberg asks, I'd love a brush breakdown, which brands you like for certain products, etc. This is actually a question that I get asked quite often. And I think that brushes especially can get very overwhelming. I mean, just in front of me, I have so many brushes. Honestly, 99% of them are totally unnecessary. I think, especially when it comes to brushes, you really don't need to go above and beyond. The only reason why I have such a large collection is just from collecting them throughout the years. So obviously, when it comes to brushes, you can really go wild and crazy. You can have 100 different brushes, all different shapes, all different sizes, all different hair types. But if I really had to scale it down, these would be the only brushes that I would have in my collection, and I would be able to get pretty much any look that I wanted with this set. As far as brands go, I'm not exceptionally loyal to any particular brand, but there is definitely one brand that you're gonna see here that is gonna keep popping up because it's currently my favorite, just because I really like the quality of the brushes, and that brand is Spectrum. But let's get into my little kit. Let's start off first with the foundation brush. This guy from MAC is definitely one of my favorites. This is the MAC 170. This is a super dense, slightly angled buffing brush, and I really like this mostly because of the size. I feel like I'm able to be pretty precise with this, but it's also not too small that it takes me forever to blend out my foundation. Because of the size, you're also totally able to use this underneath the eyes to blend out concealer, so you don't necessarily need to have a concealer brush as well. For a concealer brush, again, not totally necessary, because I really do feel like you can use the foundation brush as your concealer brush too. But this guy from Spectrum and Katie Jane Hughes, the 08, is definitely one of my favorites. It kind of looks like a really large blending brush, and it's really nice and fluffy, so it really airbrushes the concealer into the skin quite beautifully. You can use this to very precisely contour your face, on your cheekbones, on your nose. Then I would also recommend having some type of powder brush. This is the Spectrum and Katie Jane Hughes 02. The reason why I like this brush in particular is because it's nice and small but still fluffy, so it's not going to pack powder on my face when I use it, and it's nice and precise as well. And this is also a great multitasker brush. You could totally use this for highlighter and blush as well. Then we have a blush brush. This is the Spectrum and Katie Jane Hughes 05. I do really like an angled blush brush. I feel like it applies the blush in a really flattering and also easy and seamless way. For a bronzer brush, I do like something a little bit larger and fluffier. I really like this guy from Refer. It's the number 22 brush. When it comes to bronzer, I like a larger brush because I feel like it just gives more of a veil of color rather than something super precise. So it just gives me more of a natural look. If I did want something more precise, I would use more of like an angled brush like this. But this works great because it really will diffuse the product really nicely. But I'm also able to control it because it's fluffy and big, but it's just big and fluffy enough. I also wanted to include a brush in this little kit for creams. So this is what I like to use for my cream blushes and cream bronzers. This is the Spectrum and Katie Jane Hughes 03 brush. This is a duo fiber brush, so it's a little bit more sparse right at the top over here. And I really like that for creams because I feel like it kind of gives more of a diffused look. It blends it really easily as well. So those are all of my go-to face brushes. Then we have the eye brushes. When it comes to blending brushes, I feel like you really only need 3, a large one, a medium one, and a small one. For a large fluffy one, this is the Smith 237. For the medium blending brush, this is the Smith 232. And then for precision work, I really love the Spectrum and Katie Jane Hughes number 17. It's just like a small but slim blending brush. Then I would say you need like one shader brush. This is the Sigma E54 medium sweeper. Then for detail brushes, I have these two guys from ColourPop. We have the E29, which is a very, very small little flat brush. And then for an angled brush, this is the E30. An angled brush is really great if you do want to use it to apply eyeliner. It's just always good to have an angled brush in a collection. And then the very last brush that I wanted to recommend, this actually kind of goes more so in the face category, is the Spectrum and Katie Jane Hughes number 13. This is kind of like a medium density pencil brush, and I really like this to touch up areas throughout my face. So for example, if I want to clean up the line around my lip, I'll put a little bit of concealer on this and use that to clean around the edge, and it's the perfect brush for something like that. So that was pretty long-winded, but I hope that helped. Car into house asks, how do you prevent makeup from building up between your eyebrows, specifically such a struggle? The simplest way to answer this question is to just apply a lot less product than you think you need in that area, because this is such a small area that also has a lot of movement. So any area that does have a lot of movement on your face is going to move your foundation around. So that's why sometimes, you know, foundation will settle in the smile lines because we talk throughout the day. And so the foundation is going to move around and kind of fill into the creases on our faces. It's just natural, but it's less likely to happen if you use less product. And also apply a very thin layer of powder to set it in place. So that will help limit the movement as much as possible. So a lot less product and set it with a light layer of powder should do the trick. Nicole Isabel Castro asks, I always want to do the 90s era lips, but I can never get it correct. So when it comes to makeup trends, I think it's important to kind of make them your own. You don't always need to take them super literally. So the 90s lip, is definitely a very specific type of lip. You have a much darker lip line and typically a much lighter brownie nude matte lipstick in the center. So I actually like to wear what I consider to be my own version of the 90s lip pretty often. I feel like it's kind of my go-to lip look actually. And so the way that I make it my own and I make it work for my makeup style is I kind of figure out, okay, what do I really like about the 90s lip? And for me, I really love the cool toned brown tones. I just feel like they're really edgy and cool and they're still really wearable at the same time. And I love that look. And I also like the slightly darker lip line. So for me, I just want to find those colors that are really going to suit my skin tone and suit my style so that it doesn't feel wrong on me. And I think that's something that can be applied to literally any and all makeup trends that you want to incorporate into your own routine. You can shift them and change them to suit your own personal style. So I like to go for a brown lip liner. This is definitely a key for that 90s lip look. How dark you go and how brown you go is totally up to you. This tone over here is kind of like my comfort zone. It's brown enough, but not so brown and so dark that it just looks off on my skin tone. So this is the Buxom Power Line in High Def Honey. And it is a really, really beautiful medium tone nudie brown shade. So I'm going to apply this around the edges of my lips. Something that was also very popular in the 90s was using a lip liner that was significantly darker than the actual lipstick. And I really love that look, but to make something a little bit more wearable for me, I just go just a little bit lighter than the actual lip line. And so I'm going to use this MAC lipstick in Teddy 2.0. And this is like one of my go-to combos at the moment. And then I also like to blend the lip line slightly into the lipstick so that it's not too harsh, which will also soften it and make it a little bit more wearable. And I'm just using the brush that's on the other end of this lip liner, which is very convenient. You could totally keep this matte, and that's definitely more true to the look from the 90s, but I actually love applying a little bit of a gloss just to, again, elevate it for today. And this lip gloss is one of my new favorites. It's so perfect for this type of look. It is the NARS lip gloss in Nympho, and it's a cool toned mauve brown, and it's perfect. And that is like my perfect nude lip, very much inspired by that 90s lip trend. Allison _ asks, when I wear sunscreen, my makeup doesn't last at all. Any tips? Trying to find the right skincare routine that also works well with your makeup routine can sometimes be a journey. And especially when it comes to sunscreen, that could definitely be a product that can disrupt your makeup quite a bit. And so it's really important to try and find the right sunscreen that works best for your skin and works best for your makeup routine where you don't feel like it disrupts your makeup at all. It's kind of hard for me to give you tips or advice on this because I do feel that you kind of just need to try different combinations of products, different combinations of sunscreens with different foundations, and just kind of see what works best together. I personally find from my experience that sunscreens that mesh the best with foundations are ones that really truly disappear in the skin and don't leave too much of like a creamy residue on the face, because I feel like sometimes that creamy residue can be nice because it can add like a nice slip to the foundation, but sometimes it can just disrupt the foundation and make it break up, which is just not what you want. So I did want to recommend a specific sunscreen product that I have used with so many different types of foundations and that I've never found ever disrupts the wear or the look of my foundation, and that is the Coola Sunsilk Drops. So this is not a creamy formula at all. This is much more of like a serum-like formula. So it's very, very lightweight in texture. When you apply it onto your skin, it disappears on the skin and you do not feel it. It does not leave any type of residue. So if you find you're having a lot of trouble with your current SPF, I would consider perhaps changing it up to something similar to this that is just a very, very lightweight texture, because I think you'll have less of an issue with your foundation reacting to it. But let me know in the comments if you guys have any other tips to add to this. Next question is from Isabel, and she asks, is primer necessary when your moisturizer basically acts like a primer? It really depends on what you want out of your primer. If you want a primer that is just going to simply hydrate your skin, then definitely 100% a moisturizer is more than sufficient. And I don't feel that having a hydrating primer on top of your hydrating moisturizer is necessary. It's kind of like a little bit redundant. But if you do want a primer that's going to do something more than just hydrate your skin, like add a glow or mattify or blur your pores, then yes, using a separate primer is a whole separate thing. And that's when I would say a primer is worth it. But otherwise, just use your skincare. Cheyenne's Eyes asked, natural nose contour? I'm assuming you want me to show you how I would do a natural nose contour, and I'm more than happy to show you. I normally prefer creams over powders for the rest of my face, but when it comes to my nose, I actually do prefer powders over creams because I find that I am able to get a much softer look, whereas with the cream, it definitely can create really harsh lines. So first you want to find your contour powder. The Benefit Hoola powder is one of my favorites to contour because it's perfectly cool toned enough where it will act as a nice shadow on the face. And then I like to go in with a fluffy eyeshadow brush. I just want to make sure that it's loose and fluffy so that whatever lines I'm creating on my nose is going to be nicely blurred. So it's really simple. All I do is I take a little bit of the powder, tap off the excess. I don't want too much. And I start right where my brow meets my nose. I bring it down one side of my nose, down the other, connect it at the tip, and then I just go over the lines, just making sure that they're nicely blended. But I actually find that the contour color isn't the most important step. The most important step is the concealer, because what's really going to make that contour pop is the lightness. So after I contour the sides, I go in with my concealer and I just make sure that it's a concealer that is just a little bit lighter than my skin tone. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. And I apply this right on my bridge in a very thin line. And this is what's really going to bring the whole illusion together. So I put a little dot right there and then a little line on my bridge, and then I blend it with a brush. And I just make sure to be really nice and precise. I don't want to move it around too much. I kind of just pat it in place so it doesn't go on the sides. And this is basically just going to clean up that contour. And then what I do to really bring this natural contoured nose look home is I take my brush and I just run it along the sides of the contour line so that it's not super harsh. And keep in mind, there's really barely any product on here. There's just enough to just soften that contour. And that's how I get a very, very natural looking nose contour. Super easy too. Just Daisy Jade asks, how do I actually keep eyeliner in the waterline? Is there a miracle product or technique? So this is actually a technique that I learned when I was in makeup school years and years and years ago. And it's something that I still do whenever I put eyeliner in my waterline, because it's really one of the only things that will keep the product there. I mean, first things first, it's definitely not a bad idea to try and find an eyeliner that works well in the waterline. And there are definitely some eyeliners that I find work better than others. One of my favorites no longer exists. It's been discontinued and it's very upsetting. It was the Milk Makeup gel eyeliners. They were so good. I also really like the Pat McGrath eyeliners. Those are also very, very good and last well in the waterline. But the real key to making eyeliner last in the waterline is to actually set it. Now, I will say to use this tip with caution, especially if you do have sensitive eyes. It's not ideal, but if you don't have sensitive eyes and you don't think this is going to bother you, then basically what you do is you take your eyeliner, you put it on your waterline as you normally would. Then you want to take a little bit of an eyeshadow that's around the same color and take a small little detail brush, like an angled brush like this, take a little bit of the powder and just very lightly dab it on top of the color on your waterline. And that's going to set it in place and it makes it last so much better. Becca Curls asks, can you use a full coverage foundation as concealer? You can use a concealer as a foundation. You can use a foundation as a concealer. You can use a blush as eyeshadow, a bronzer as eyeshadow, a eyeshadow as bronzer. You can really do whatever you want with the formulas as long as it's obviously safe to do so. There are definitely some formulas that are actually recommended not to use on eyes, for example. And so those would be the formulas that I would say don't do that. But for pretty much everything else, you can use makeup however you see fit. And I think it's really important to remember that. There are definitely formula differences between concealers and foundations, but if you have a full coverage foundation that you find works really, really well underneath your eyes, then go for it and continue using it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing so. Emily asks, when is it a good time to toss a product? Gloss, mascara, etc. Does eyeshadow expire? So pretty much all products have a suggested shelf life on the packaging. So every product is going to have this symbol on it. It pretty much looks like a little jar. And then inside the jar, there's a number and an M. That basically means months. So for example, this Clinique concealer says 6M, which means after opening this, it's recommended to toss it after 6 months. Do I follow this? No. This is just a suggestion, and it just is meant to kind of give you an idea of, you know, the typical shelf life of the product. I mainly go off of the way a product feels, looks, and smells in comparison to how it normally does. So for example, if I have a concealer and all of a sudden it starts to separate or it smells a little bit off and I've had it for some time, then I will consider it to be off and I'll throw it out. When it comes to mascara though, I would listen. I actually like to toss my mascaras after about 3 months just to be extra safe. Some people wait a little bit longer, but I definitely wouldn't keep the same mascara for like over a year, especially if you are consistently using it, because it is a creamy liquid formula. You are using it close to your eye. It's very likely there's a lot of bacteria going on and you could very likely develop an eye infection. It can just happen. Powders though are a completely different story. And this is actually a question that I had not too long ago when I was decluttering some makeup. And I found palettes that I've had for close to like 7 to 8 years. And I honestly didn't know if I should get rid of them or not. There were some that when I touched, they felt like chalky and they definitely didn't feel like how they felt like 7 to 8 years ago. So I got rid of them. But there were other ones that were just as old that felt totally fine, that performed totally fine and didn't have any smell or like weird moldy stuff going on it. So I kept it. Not 100% sure if I should. I don't know if I would recommend keeping powders for that long, but powders definitely don't go bad in the same way liquids and creams go bad. So you can definitely keep them for much, much, much longer. Keep them until they tell you not to keep them anymore. That's basically my motto. The next question comes from Mary Ellen, and she says, it seems like no matter what I do, I can't escape under eye creasing with concealer. Sad face. Oh no, turn that frown upside down, Mary Ellen. I don't want to see that sad face. It drives me crazy that there is this expectation that our skin must be smooth and creaseless, because it's so not realistic. Because like I mentioned earlier in the video, when you put makeup on a face that moves, it's going to settle and move around with your face, and that's totally fine. So everybody has like fine lines underneath the eyes, and when you smile, those fine lines, appear. When you don't smile, they smooth out again. And so when you're talking and smiling throughout the day, there's going to be a little bit of creasing that happens just naturally because our faces move. So that said, a certain level of creasing is totally normal. If you still feel like your concealer is like creasing to a level where it's just like not normal, then you may have to just assess how you're applying your concealer and what you're putting on top of it. So very similar to a lot of my other tips, I do feel that less is more, and the less product that you apply, the less likely it's going to crease. I do find that a lot of people tend to apply more product than they actually need, especially when it comes to the under eyes. For example, if you have dark circles that you want to cover up, your first instinct may be to apply a lot of concealer to cover up those dark circles, when you don't need all of that concealer. You may just need a higher coverage concealer, but you can use a lot less. And then of course, setting with powder is another great way to help avoid excess creasing. You just want to take your favorite setting powder, take a small brush. You do not need to pack on the setting powder, and very lightly dust it underneath the eyes, and you should be good to go. Laura asks how to figure out the angle of the flick for winged eyeliner. Winged eyeliner is so great and so interesting because depending on the angle of your flick, it can completely change the shape of your eye. There's not really like a right way to flick out your eyeliner because it really just comes down to what you're trying to achieve and personal preference. You can do something more straight, more upturned, even downturned if that's the vibe that you're going for. But if you're looking for a shape or an angle that's going to be the most flattering for your eye shape, like kind of a no-fail angle, this is how I would find that. So take your brush, put it on the outer corner of your nostril, and line it up with the corner of your eye. This angle over here is a great no-fail angle that would probably suit my eye. Something that I think is really important though when creating a wing is to make sure that you are following the line of your lower lash line and almost making it act as an extension of that lash line. Because if you create the line too far into your eye, it's going to actually shorten your eye. Pulling a line right from my lower lash line on my outer corner up. And I'm also doing this with my eye open. So starting right at the outer corner of my eye, almost continuing my lash line and just bringing the line up. And that is how I find a good angle and a good placement for a wing. All right, guys, I think those are all the questions that I'm gonna answer today. I really hope that you enjoyed today's makeup hotline. Don't forget to let me know all of your thoughts in the comments, and make sure that you're following me on Instagram if you wanna participate in the next makeup hotline. Hit thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And thank you so much to everybody who participated in today's video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.